Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell y'all something today that might just free your soul a little bit. Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants peace. But not everybody around you wants that for you. There are people in your life who smile at you but drain you. And the smartest thing you can do is recognize that not every smiling face is your friend. Protecting your energy is not just a suggestion. It's a survival skill in today's world, especially when dealing with toxic people. When you allow yourself to be constantly exposed to negativity, manipulation, or drama, it chips away at your peace and slowly drains the very essence of who you are. Toxic people operate in a way that makes you feel like you owe them something. Your time, your attention, your reaction. But the truth is, you don't owe anyone access to your mental and emotional space if all they do is poison it. Protecting your energy means understanding that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Some people are only there to eat, not to build, support, or uplift. They come with criticism disguised as concern, with passive-aggressive comments masked as jokes, and with intentions that serve only themselves. You cannot afford to entertain that when you're on a path to growth. The smarter move is not to confront them head on every time they try to bait you. The smarter move is to rise above their frequency. Toxic people want to argue. They want to pull you into chaos. They feed off of attention, even if it's negative. So when you disengage, when you remain calm, when you choose not to respond, they lose because you didn't give them what they wanted. That's how you protect your energy, by becoming unavailable to foolishness. You can't control how others behave, but you can control what you tolerate. And tolerance without boundaries is an open door for emotional and mental exhaustion. If you find yourself constantly explaining, defending, or justifying yourself to someone who never really listens or respects you, pay attention. That's not love, that's control. That's toxicity trying to disguise itself as concern. Protecting your energy in that moment means stepping back, taking a breath, and asking yourself if this person truly adds value to your life or only adds stress. It's not about cutting people off cold for every disagreement. It's about recognizing patterns. If you leave every interaction with someone feeling worse than before, that's a pattern. If someone only reaches out to unload their problems but never asks about you, that's a pattern. If you constantly feel like you're walking on eggshells around someone, that's not peace, that's survival mode. And nobody grows in survival mode. You're meant to thrive, not tiptoe through your own life. Protecting your energy also means knowing when to say no. It means setting boundaries that might disappoint others, but will free you. It means honoring your own time, your emotional bandwidth, and your mental clarity. People will call you selfish when you stop sacrificing yourself for their comfort. Let them. The people who truly care about you will respect your need to recharge, to say no, to create space. They won't guilt you or gaslight you into overextending yourself. Toxic people, on the other hand, will take and take until you have nothing left, and then blame you for being empty. One of the most powerful things you can do is remove yourself from the line of emotional fire. You don't have to stay in the room, in the relationship, in the circle. Sometimes protecting your energy means turning your phone off, saying I'm not available for this conversation, or quietly distancing yourself without the need for explanation. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not every fight needs to be fought. Wisdom lies in choosing which battles are worth your peace and which ones you simply walk away from. When you start treating your energy like a currency, valuable, limited, and essential, you become more mindful of where it goes and who gets access to it. You start realizing that being selective isn't being arrogant, it's being aware. Toxic people won't like it because they thrive when you're tired, confused, or emotionally stretched thin. But the moment you stop feeding that cycle, you take your power back, you reclaim your focus. You preserve your joy. You protect your energy like your life depends on it, because in many ways it truly does. Don't argue, observe. That's one of the smartest strategies you can use when dealing with toxic people. Arguing with someone who has no intention of understanding you is like trying to explain the ocean to a fish who refuses to leave the bowl. Toxic individuals don't argue to resolve, they argue to dominate. They twist your words, shift blame, and gaslight you into thinking you're overreacting. But when you switch from reacting to observing, you take away their fuel. You stop dancing to their tune. You start seeing them for who they are instead of who they pretend to be. Observation gives you clarity, and clarity gives you power. Instead of reacting emotionally, you begin to notice patterns. You begin to identify triggers and motives. You begin to understand that not every conflict is about truth. Sometimes it's about control. Toxic people often bait you into defending yourself, not because they care about your side, but because they thrive on your energy. The more emotional you become, the more in control they feel. That's why silence is such a powerful response. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that peace is more valuable than being right. When you stop engaging in their chaos, they lose the power to control your emotional state. They start to realize that their usual tactics, guilt, manipulation, gaslighting, don't work on you anymore. That's when they panic or shift or double down. But you've already won because you chose to observe instead of get pulled into their storm. Observing also gives you time to decide how you want to handle the situation. You might not have an immediate response, but that's okay. Silence is not a weakness, it's strategy. Let them show who they are. Let them reveal their true intentions. The more you observe, the more you detach emotionally. You start responding with logic instead of anger. You begin to see that their outbursts, their mind games, and their passive aggression are not about you. They're about them. That's the moment you reclaim your peace. Because now you're no longer playing their game. You're just watching from the sidelines, making mental notes, learning who's really for you and who just wants to use you as their emotional punching bag. You learn that not every insult deserves a rebuttal, and not every lie needs to be corrected. Sometimes the smartest response is no response. Let people believe what they want to believe. Let them talk. Let them spin their narratives. You've got nothing to prove to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. Your energy is too valuable to waste on convincing people who thrive on chaos. The more you practice observing, the easier it becomes to stay calm in the face of provocation. You become less reactive and more intentional. You stop matching energies and start protecting your own. You stop trying to fix people and start fixing your focus. You stop trying to control how they act and start controlling how you respond. That shift alone changes everything. You begin to value your peace more than you value winning arguments. You begin to understand that you don't need to engage with every voice that demands your attention. You become selective, measured, grounded. Toxic people can't survive long in environments where their manipulation has no effect. So when you stop reacting, when you just observe, they lose their power over you. They may get louder, but you stay calmer. They may push harder, but you hold firmer, and eventually they either change or remove themselves. Because a toxic person cannot maintain power over someone who has learned to control their own emotion. That emotional control, born out of silent observation, is the shield that protects your mental clarity and emotional well-being. Setting clear boundaries is one of the most essential and self-respecting actions you can take when dealing with toxic people. Boundaries aren't about being cold or cutting people off for no reason. They're about drawing a line around your emotional, mental, and even physical space and saying, this is what I will and will not allow. Toxic people test those lines constantly. They want to see how far they can push, how much they can take, and how much of yourself you're willing to sacrifice to keep the peace. But the truth is, peace that comes at the cost of your self-worth isn't peace at all. It's compliance. And the longer you comply with what doesn't serve you, the more disconnected you become from your own values, identity, and emotional strength. A person who truly respects you will never push your boundaries out of convenience. But toxic people often operate with a sense of entitlement. They feel entitled to your time, your forgiveness, your silence, and your space. And if you don't have strong boundaries in place, you'll find yourself constantly giving more than you can afford to lose, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You may start feeling like you're being pulled in every direction, trying to please people who never seem satisfied. That exhaustion, that sense of being drained, that emotional burnout is often a sign that your boundaries are either weak or non-existent, and no one else is going to set those boundaries for you. That's your job. That's your responsibility. It's your right to protect your well-being, even if it makes others uncomfortable. When you start setting boundaries, you'll notice how quickly some people change. Some will respect it, and others will resist it. The ones who resist are often the ones who benefit the most from your lack of boundaries in the first place. They'll call you selfish, distant, rude, or dramatic. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because they can no longer exploit your kindness. That reaction is not your fault. It's a reflection of how they see you as someone they can control, someone they can lean on without giving back, someone who's always available no matter how much it costs you. But once you start making decisions that protect your peace and preserve your energy, you'll realize that the people who truly value you will adjust and honor your boundaries without guilt tripping you. Boundaries are a form of self-love. They're how you communicate your standards, your values, and your needs. They teach people how to treat you, and more importantly, they teach you how to treat yourself. When you say no to something that doesn't align with your well-being, you're saying yes to your growth. When you choose not to engage in toxic conversations, you're choosing your mental clarity. When you limit access to people who repeatedly hurt or disrespect you, you're choosing healing over chaos. And that choice has to become a daily habit, not just a reaction to pain. You set boundaries before things escalate, not after. You don't wait until you're completely broken to draw the line. You draw the line to prevent yourself from breaking in the first place. The beauty of boundaries is that they don't need to be loud or dramatic. You don't always have to make a big announcement. Sometimes a boundary is as simple as not answering a text right away, stepping out of a conversation, choosing not to share personal details, or declining an invitation. It's not about explaining yourself every time. It's about honoring your limits with consistency. Toxic people will always look for cracks in your armor, ways to sneak past your line. But when you become consistent with your boundaries, those cracks begin to seal. You become a person who is not easily manipulated, not easily shaken, not easily controlled. And that kind of personal power is something toxic people fear, because it means they can no longer influence your emotions, your decisions, or your direction. Boundaries are not walls to keep everyone out. They are doors that allow the right people in and keep the wrong ones from draining your life. Refusing to be controlled by guilt is one of the most powerful decisions you can make when dealing with toxic people. Guilt is one of their favorite tools. They use it to manipulate, to shift blame, to keep you tethered to their drama. It starts subtly with comments that make you second guess yourself, question your intentions, and feel bad for doing what's best for you. over time, that guilt grows into a pattern of self-sacrifice. You start saying yes when you mean no. You start apologizing for things that aren't your fault. You begin to feel responsible for someone else's emotions, choices, and failures. That's the trap, because guilt has a way of disguising itself as empathy. You don't want to hurt anyone. You don't want to be the bad guy. And toxic people know how to play on that compassion to keep you from standing in your truth. When guilt becomes a method of control, it's no longer about love or connection. It's about power. Toxic individuals will remind you of everything they've ever done for you only to make you feel indebted. They'll twist your actions and frame you as selfish for choosing your peace. They'll make you feel like setting a boundary is betrayal, like saying no is rejection, like stepping away is abandonment. But none of that is true. That's the emotional manipulation speaking, not reality. You are not responsible for carrying someone else's emotional baggage. You are not obligated to stay in unhealthy dynamics just because someone else refuses to grow or heal. Love, respect, and loyalty are not measured by how much you're willing to suffer to keep someone else comfortable. Toxic guilt makes you shrink. It makes you question your worth. It convinces you that you're only as good as your ability to serve others, even at your own expense. But real strength is found in reclaiming your ability to say no without explaining, to walk away without apologizing, and to choose yourself without feeling like a villain. That's not selfishness. That's clarity. That's freedom. That's maturity. And it comes when you realize that guilt should never be a motivator for your decisions. If your choices are based on fear of how someone else will react, you're not living in alignment. You're surviving in reaction. And survival mode is no place for growth. Letting go of guilt means confronting those internalized beliefs that tell you it's wrong to protect your peace. Maybe you were raised to believe that love equals sacrifice, or that saying no makes you ungrateful. Maybe someone in your life taught you that your needs should always come second, or that disagreeing with someone is disrespectful. These are learned behaviors, often shaped by past trauma, unhealthy relationships, or cultural expectations. But you have the power to unlearn them. You have the right to redefine what love looks like, what respect feels like, and what responsibility truly means. You are not here to be a martyr for anyone's comfort. You are here to live with intention, with clarity, with courage. Every time you choose to release guilt, you reclaim a piece of your power. You start to notice the difference between compassion and codependency, between helping and enabling, between care and control. You begin to trust your instincts again instead of suppressing them out of fear of disappointing others. You begin to stand tall and speak clear and move with purpose. Toxic people may not like it. In fact, they'll probably push harder when they see you no longer react the way you used to. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their reaction is not your burden. You don't have to carry the weight of other people's expectations, moods, or emotional messes just to be seen as good. You are already enough without sacrificing your peace to prove it. Refusing to be controlled by guilt allows you to live from a place of strength, not fear, and to choose your path without constantly looking over your shoulder. Staying focused on your purpose is one of the most effective ways to deal with toxic people, because purpose acts as a compass. It keeps you grounded, it reminds you of who you are, and it protects you from distractions that are designed to pull you off track. Toxic people are masters at creating noise. They'll pull you into drama, stir up conflict, and throw shade your way, not because you've done anything wrong, but because they can't stand the light you carry. The more focused you are, the more they'll try to interfere because your success threatens their comfort. Your progress exposes their stagnation. Your discipline reveals their chaos. When someone doesn't know their own purpose, they often spend their time trying to sabotage yours. That's why staying laser focused on your goals is not just about achieving something. It's about protecting your energy from the people who don't want to see you grow. Purpose gives you clarity. It helps you see what truly matters and what doesn't. When you know where you're headed, you don't waste time arguing with people who aren't even on the same road. You don't lose sleep over opinions that don't feed your vision. You start to realize that not everyone deserves your time. Not every invitation deserves a yes. And not every critic deserves a response. Your time is limited. Your energy is sacred. You can't afford to pour it into distractions disguised as relationships. Sometimes toxic people show up as friends, co-workers, or even family, but their presence always feels heavy. They don't encourage you, they discourage you. They don't celebrate your progress, they question it. They act like they're concerned, but their words are laced with jealousy and subtle jabs. And if you're not anchored in your purpose, you'll find yourself shrinking to fit in, dumbing down your vision to make others comfortable, or second-guessing yourself because of someone else's insecurity. When you stay focused on your purpose, you develop tunnel vision, not in the sense of ignoring everything, but in the sense of filtering out what's not aligned with your calling. You begin to set priorities. You stop chasing validation. You start making choices based on where you want to be, not based on who might be offended. That level of focus scares toxic people because now you're no longer available for their nonsense. You're not feeding the cycle of drama they thrive on. You're not biting the bait they throw at you. And that frustrates them because they can no longer control your emotions. They can't manipulate your attention. They can't slow your progress with their opinions. You've become too focused, too determined, too clear on what you're here to do. Purpose is also what gives your pain meaning. Toxic people will try to make you feel like you're crazy for wanting more, like you're selfish for dreaming big, or ungrateful for walking away from comfort. But your purpose will remind you that you're not here to play small. You're not here to meet anyone's low expectations. You're here to rise. And rising sometimes means leaving behind the noise, even if it means standing alone for a while. It means choosing long-term growth over short-term approval. It means doing the work in silence while they gossip in loud circles. It means staying committed to your goals even when no one claps for you. Purpose doesn't need an audience. It needs discipline. It needs vision. It needs focus. The more aligned you are with your purpose, the less reactive you become. You stop being pulled into every emotional battle. You stop letting toxic people dictate your mood, your schedule, or your decisions. You become intentional about where you invest your attention. You learn to say no without guilt, walk away without anger, and stay grounded without explanation. Your purpose becomes your protection. It becomes the reason you keep moving forward even when others try to hold you back. It becomes the filter through which you evaluate every relationship, every opportunity, and every distraction. You no longer ask, does this make them happy? You start asking, does this move me closer to my purpose? Letting actions speak louder than confrontation is a strategy that demands strength, discipline, and emotional maturity, especially when dealing with toxic people. Toxic individuals often thrive on attention, reaction, and emotional chaos. They want to pull you into arguments, provoke you with passive-aggressive behavior, and get you to lose control so they can twist the narrative and make you the villain. But when you choose to stay silent and focused, when you let your growth, your peace, and your results speak for themselves, it sends a message much louder than any argument ever could. Toxic people want you to respond emotionally because that gives them power. Your silence, your calm, your progress, those things disturb them because they can't manipulate you if they can't control your emotions. That's why choosing not to engage is not weakness, it's wisdom. When you allow your actions to be your voice, you shift the dynamic completely. You stop feeding into the cycles of blame, guilt, and defensiveness. You start showing with your behavior that you will not tolerate disrespect, that you will not stay in places where you are not valued, and that you are capable of walking away with dignity. You begin to send a message without raising your voice. You show them, not tell them, that you're evolving. And nothing unsettles a toxic person more than someone they can no longer trigger. They want you to fight, to explain, to justify yourself endlessly. They want you to fall apart so they can point fingers and play the victim. But when you rise above and keep moving forward, you deny them the chaos they crave. You keep your energy intact and your reputation clean because you didn't stoop to their level. You rose above it. Letting actions speak is also about self-respect. It's choosing to live your truth instead of arguing about it. It's knowing that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life, especially those who only want to critique, control, or confuse you. Toxic people often operate in manipulation, and one of their tactics is to bait you into explaining your worth or proving your goodness. But your character doesn't need defending if it's real. The way you live, the consistency of your values, the peace you carry, that's the real proof. Over time, people begin to notice who's genuine and who's pretending. They see who's constantly involved in conflict and who quietly keeps growing. They recognize who's always talking and who's actually walking the path they speak about. Avoiding confrontation doesn't mean avoiding the truth. Sometimes it means showing the truth through how you live. Toxic people might lie about you, twist facts, or play innocent, but you don't have to chase every rumor or defend every lie. That's exhausting and counterproductive. Let time reveal everything. Let consistency uncover who was real. Let your silence speak louder than their noise. That's not avoidance, it's confidence. Confidence that your truth will stand without needing your constant defense. Confidence that your life will bear fruit and the results will silence the doubt. Choosing action over confrontation also keeps you in control of your narrative. When you don't react to every provocation, you're no longer playing someone else's game. You're living on your terms. That control helps you stay grounded, helps you protect your energy, and helps you focus on what actually matters. You start investing in yourself, your goals, and your peace instead of wasting emotional currency on people who thrive on chaos. You show them through your stability that they don't get to influence your direction. You show them through your progress that their presence is not essential to your success. You show them through your joy that you can heal, grow, and thrive without ever needing to fight for their approval or attention. That level of discipline sends a message no amount of shouting can compete with. It's not about proving a point with words. It's about proving a life with purpose, peace, and quiet strength. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something about life that I've learned the hard way. Every single year gives you a chance to start again, but not everybody takes it. Some people carry the same pain, the same excuses, the same fear from one year into the next, and then they wonder why nothing changes. But 2026, listen to me carefully, 2026 can be the year you rebuild yourself from the ground up. Not fix a little here and there. Not patch up what's broken. I'm talking about becoming a new you, a stronger you, a disciplined you, a focused you. Because you don't get a different life by hoping. You get a different life by changing your habits. You see, success is not an event. It's not one big lucky break. Success is built on what you do every day when nobody is watching. It's built on habits. And if your habits are broken, your life will feel broken. But here's the good news, you can rebuild both. You can decide that the person you were is not the person you're going to stay. I don't care how many mistakes you made. I don't care how many times you failed. I don't care how lost you feel right now. If you're still breathing, God ain't done with you yet. That means you still got time to rebuild. The first thing you got to understand is this: you can't rebuild your life with the same mindset that damaged it. Some of y'all trying to change your results without changing your thinking. That don't work. You got to start telling yourself a new story about who you are. Stop saying, I'm unlucky. Stop saying, I always mess up. Stop saying, this is just how I am. No, it ain't. That's who you practiced being. And anything you practiced, you can unlearn and relearn. You rebuild yourself by choosing new habits that support the future you want. Another thing that keeps people stuck is waiting for motivation. Let me tell you something, motivation is unreliable. Some days you feel like it, some days you don't. But habits don't care about feelings. Habits run on decision and repetition. You brush your teeth whether you feel motivated or not. You go to work whether you feel motivated or not. That's the same way you got to treat your growth. If you only improve when you feel inspired, you'll improve once in a while. But if you build habits, you'll improve every day. Now, rebuilding yourself also means letting go of what don't fit the new you. Some of y'all trying to carry old environments, old friends, old attitudes into a new season. That's like trying to build a new house on a cracked foundation. It won't hold. Growth requires separation. Not because you're better than anybody, but because you're serious about your future. Everybody can't go where you're going. Everybody can't think how you need to think. Everybody can't support what you're trying to become. And that's okay. Rebuilding sometimes feels lonely before it feels powerful. Let me tell you something else rebuilding is not pretty. It's uncomfortable. It's frustrating. It's slow. You're going to have days where you slip back into old habits. Days where you doubt yourself. Days where you're tired. But the difference between people who rebuild and people who stay stuck is simple. They keep going anyway. They don't wait to feel ready. They act while they're scared. They act while they're unsure. They act while they're still healing. Because action creates clarity. Action creates confidence. Action creates change. You also got to learn to trust the process. See, we live in a world that wants fast results. But real transformation takes time. You didn't become who you are overnight, and you won't become who you're meant to be overnight either. But every day you practice better habits, you're laying bricks. 1 brick don't look like much. 10 bricks don't look like much. But stack them long enough, you got a wall. Keep stacking, you got a house. Keep stacking, you got a life rebuilt stronger than before. Another truth is this: rebuilding yourself requires honesty. You got to face what you avoid. Face your discipline. Face your excuses. Face your distractions. Face your comfort zone. Because what you ignore controls you. But what you confront, you can change. You can't rebuild around denial. You rebuild around truth. And the truth is, most of us know exactly what habits are holding us back. We just don't want to give them up because they're comfortable. But comfort don't create growth. Pressure does. Effort does. Consistency does. And listen to me carefully on this. Your past does not disqualify your future. Some of you feel like you're too far gone. Too many mistakes. Too much time wasted. Too many chances missed. But rebuilding is not about erasing the past. It's about using it. Your failures become lessons. Your pain becomes strength. Your setbacks become direction. When you rebuild right, nothing you went through is wasted. It becomes part of the foundation. You also got to rebuild your relationship with yourself. A lot of people talk to themselves worse than anybody else ever has. I'm not good enough. I'll never change. I always fail. If you spoke to a friend like that, you wouldn't have that friend long. So why are you talking to yourself like that? You become what you repeatedly tell yourself. So in 2026, you got to start speaking like the person you're becoming, not the person you're leaving behind. Identity shapes behavior. When you see yourself differently, you act differently. Let me tell you something powerful. Small habits change identity. When you wake up early consistently, you start seeing yourself as disciplined. When you exercise regularly, you start seeing yourself as strong. When you keep promises to yourself, you start seeing yourself as reliable. And once identity shifts, everything shifts. Because you don't act out of force anymore, you act out of who you believe you are. That's the real rebuild. Not just doing different things, but becoming a different person. And understand this, rebuilding yourself is an act of self-respect. It's you saying, I deserve better from me, not from the world, not from luck, not from other people, from you. That's power. Because the moment you take responsibility for your habits, you take back control of your life. You stop waiting. You stop blaming. You start building. And builders don't complain about the ground. They lay the bricks anyway. So if 2025 knocked you down, good. Because sometimes you got to fall apart to see what needs rebuilding. Sometimes you got to lose who you were to become who you meant to be. Don't be ashamed of starting again. Starting again is courage. Starting again is wisdom. Starting again is growth. Every strong person you admire rebuilt themselves at least once, sometimes many times. Now hear me on this, 2026 ain't going to change you automatically. January 1st don't have magic in it. A new calendar don't create a new character. The only way this year becomes different is if you become different. Different habits, different discipline, different focus, different standards. That's the rebuild. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need permission. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need approval. You decide, you commit, you act. And I want you to imagine something. Imagine the version of you at the end of this year who kept the right habits, the one who stayed consistent, the one who didn't quit, the one who rebuilt patiently. That version of you is stronger, calmer, clearer, more confident. And that version is not fantasy. It's the result of daily choices starting now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. So stand up in your mind today and declare something. I am rebuilding myself in 2026, not wishing, not hoping, brick by brick, habit by habit, decision by decision, day by day. And when you do that long enough, you won't recognize the person you used to be. And that is one of the greatest victories a human being can experience. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not finished. You are under construction. And if you commit to the right habits, this can be the year you meet the strongest version of yourself you've ever known. Rebuilding your life always begins with what you do repeatedly, not what you feel occasionally. A lot of people wait for motivation like it's some magical signal that tells them when it's time to change. They say, I'll start when I feel ready, or I just need the right mood. But the truth is, readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision followed by action. The most powerful changes in your life will never come from bursts of inspiration. They come from patterns, from routines, from habits you practice until they become automatic. That's why rebuilding yourself is not about hype, excitement, or temporary energy. It's about structure. It's about choosing behaviors that move you forward and repeating them until they become part of who you are. Think about it like this. Every day you already live by habits, whether you notice them or not. The time you wake up, the way you use your phone, how you respond to stress, what you eat, how you spend your free time, these are not random. They're conditioned patterns. And those patterns are quietly building your future. If the habits are weak, the future feels stuck. If the habits are strong, the future expands. That means the direction of your life is not controlled by big dramatic decisions once in a while, but by small repeated actions every day. That realization is powerful because it puts change within reach. You don't need a new personality overnight. You need new daily behaviors practiced consistently. One of the biggest misunderstandings about change is believing you must feel different before you act different. But psychology and real life experience show the opposite is true. Action changes feeling. When you act disciplined, you start to feel disciplined. When you keep promises to yourself, you start to trust yourself. When you follow through, even when it's inconvenient, you begin to see yourself as reliable and strong. That identity shift comes from behavior repetition, not emotional readiness. So waiting for motivation is backwards. Motivation often shows up after you start, not before. Once you see yourself taking action, your brain begins to align with that new reality. Confidence grows because evidence grows. Habits also remove the constant mental negotiation that drains people. When something is a habit, you don't debate it every day. You don't wake up arguing with yourself about whether to do it. It's already decided. That's freedom. People think discipline is restrictive, but in reality it's liberating. It reduces decision fatigue. It removes uncertainty. It creates stability. And stability is exactly what rebuilding requires. If every day depends on how you feel, progress will be inconsistent. But if your key actions are habitual, progress becomes steady regardless of mood, stress, or circumstances. Another crucial aspect is that habits compound. One small improvement repeated daily creates results far larger than occasional intense effort. A person who improves 1% a day through consistent behavior will transform dramatically over time, while someone who makes huge effort once in a while but lacks routine often stays in the same place. This is why rebuilding feels slow at first. The early stages of habit change don't look impressive. There's no dramatic visible shift. But beneath the surface, repetition is rewiring behavior pathways. Over weeks and months, that quiet repetition becomes momentum. And once momentum forms, change accelerates. Habits also rebuild self-respect. Many people lose confidence not because they lack ability, but because they repeatedly break promises to themselves. Each time you say you'll do something and don't, your brain records inconsistency. Over time, you stop trusting your own intentions. But when you start honoring small commitments daily, trust returns. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. That internal trust is the foundation of self-belief. Without it, goals feel unrealistic. With it, growth feels natural. So rebuilding through habits is not only behavioral, it's psychological restoration. There is also power in the predictability of habits during difficult periods. Life will always include stress, setbacks, and uncertainty. Motivation disappears quickly under pressure, but habits endure because they require less emotional energy once established. That means during hard times, your routines can carry you when willpower is low. They become anchors that keep you moving forward, even when everything else feels unstable. That resilience is why habit-based change lasts longer than motivation-based change. Motivation fluctuates with mood and circumstance. Habits persist across both. Ultimately, rebuilding through daily behavior is about shifting from intention to embodiment. Instead of wishing to be disciplined, you practice disciplined actions. Instead of hoping to be focused, you repeat focused behaviors. Over time, the gap between who you are and who you want to be closes. Not through sudden transformation, but through accumulated evidence. Each repetition is a vote for the person you're becoming. And when enough votes are cast, identity changes. That's when rebuilding becomes real, when your habits no longer feel like effort, but like expression of who you have become. Your mindset and self-identity are the hidden forces behind every action you take. Most people focus on what they're doing wrong, but they rarely examine how they see themselves. The truth is, you don't consistently act against who you believe you are. If deep down you see yourself as lazy, you'll always find a reason to delay. If you see yourself as unlucky, you'll interpret every setback as proof that life is against you. If you see yourself as someone who never finishes, you'll unconsciously repeat that pattern. Behavior follows identity. That's why real rebuilding is not just about changing routines, it's about changing the story you tell yourself about who you are. Every person carries an internal narrative. It's built from childhood experiences, past failures, criticism, success, comparison, and repeated thoughts. Over time, that narrative solidifies into identity. You start saying things like, "That's just how I am," without realizing that how you are is mostly a collection of reinforced beliefs. The mind is incredibly powerful in protecting what it believes to be true about you. If you label yourself as disorganized, your brain will filter situations in ways that confirm that belief. If you label yourself as resilient, your brain will search for evidence of strength. In both cases, the identity shapes perception, and perception shapes action. Rebuilding yourself requires interrupting that automatic identity loop. You have to become aware of the labels you've accepted about yourself. Many of them were formed during moments of pain or failure. Maybe you tried something once and failed, and you decided you weren't capable. Maybe someone criticized you repeatedly, and you internalized it as truth. But isolated experiences are not permanent definitions. When you cling to them, you shrink your future to fit your past. Growth begins when you question those internal labels instead of obeying them. A powerful shift happens when you move from outcome-based identity to value-based identity. Instead of saying, I failed, so I'm a failure. You recognize that failure is an event, not a definition. Instead of saying, I'm not disciplined, you say, I am becoming disciplined. That small language change signals possibility instead of limitation. The brain responds strongly to repeated self-talk. Thoughts repeated frequently become beliefs. Beliefs repeated long enough become identity. So when you consciously choose empowering language about yourself, you are not pretending, you are planting new psychological seeds. However, identity does not change through words alone. It changes through aligned action. When you consistently perform behaviors that match the identity you want, your brain updates its internal model. If you want to see yourself as focused, you practice focus daily. If you want to see yourself as confident, you take small, courageous actions regularly. Each action becomes evidence. Evidence builds belief. Belief strengthens identity. This is why even small, disciplined acts matter so much. They are not just tasks completed, they are proof that you are evolving. Another critical aspect of mindset is how you interpret difficulty. A fixed mindset views struggle as a sign of incapability. A growth-oriented mindset views struggle as part of development. When rebuilding yourself, you must expect discomfort. The brain resists change because it prefers familiarity, even when familiarity is limiting. If you interpret that resistance as proof that you can't change, you stop. But if you interpret it as a normal stage of growth, you persist. That interpretation alone can determine whether transformation continues or collapses. Self-identity also affects standards. People act in alignment with the standards they believe they deserve. If you subconsciously feel unworthy of success, you will sabotage progress. If you believe you deserve growth, you will protect your habits. This is why rebuilding requires raising internal standards. You begin to demand better from yourself, not out of self-criticism, but out of self-respect. When your identity shifts to someone who values discipline, clarity, and purpose, your decisions begin to reflect that automatically. Over time, a new mindset creates a feedback loop of strength. As your identity evolves, your actions improve. As your actions improve, your results improve. As your results improve, your confidence grows. And as your confidence grows, your identity solidifies at a higher level. This cycle is powerful because it builds upward momentum. What once felt impossible becomes normal. What once felt uncomfortable becomes routine. What once felt out of reach becomes expected. Ultimately, rebuilding yourself is less about becoming someone completely different and more about uncovering a stronger version that already exists within you. Your mindset determines whether that version remains hidden or emerges. When you intentionally shape your self-identity through disciplined thought and aligned action, you gain control over your direction. And once you understand that who you believe you are influences everything you do, you realize that changing your life begins with changing your internal definition of yourself. Growth always demands separation from what keeps you small. Many people want transformation, but they want to carry everything familiar with them into the new version of their life. They want new discipline without leaving old distractions. They want new confidence without leaving environments that constantly weaken it. They want higher standards while staying surrounded by habits and attitudes that reinforce mediocrity. That conflict is why change often stalls. You cannot fully step into a stronger identity while holding tightly to patterns, people, and spaces that belong to the version of you you're trying to outgrow. Environments shape behavior more than willpower does. The people around you influence what feels normal. The conversations you hear influence what you think about. The expectations in your circle influence what you attempt. If you remain in spaces where procrastination, negativity, or complacency are the norm, you absorb those patterns unconsciously. Humans adapt to their surroundings quickly. That's why someone can feel motivated alone, but lose focus the moment they return to a familiar environment that rewards comfort over growth. Rebuilding requires awareness of this influence. You must examine whether your surroundings support who you're becoming or reinforce who you used to be. Letting go of environments does not always mean physically leaving places or relationships immediately. It begins with psychological distancing. You stop participating in habits that contradict your goals. You reduce exposure to influences that drain your focus. You choose inputs that align with growth instead of distraction. Over time, this shift often leads to tangible changes in how you spend time and with whom. The process can feel uncomfortable because familiarity creates emotional attachment. Even when something limits you, it still feels safe simply because it's known. Growth requires stepping beyond that familiarity into uncertainty, and uncertainty naturally feels risky. But remaining in limiting environments carries a greater long-term cost: stagnation. Excuses are another attachment that must be released. Excuses are protective narratives that shield you from discomfort or accountability. They explain why change is delayed or avoided. I don't have time. I'm too tired. This is just how life is. These statements often contain fragments of truth, but they become harmful when they prevent agency. Excuses maintain the status quo because they remove responsibility. Rebuilding demands the opposite: ownership. When you drop excuses, you accept that your choices still matter within your circumstances. That realization restores power. Instead of waiting for conditions to improve, you act within the conditions you have. Comfort zones are perhaps the hardest to leave because they feel pleasant in the short term. Comfort means predictability, low risk, and minimal strain, but long-term growth rarely exists there. Skills expand under challenge. Confidence grows through exposure to difficulty. Identity strengthens through overcoming resistance. When you repeatedly choose comfort over challenge, you reinforce the identity of someone who avoids growth stress. Over time, that avoidance shrinks your perceived capability. Tasks begin to feel harder simply because they are unfamiliar. The comfort zone becomes smaller and more restrictive. Leaving it reverses that contraction. Each step into challenge enlarges your sense of possibility. An important truth is that separation is not rejection of people or past experiences. It is alignment with your direction. Not everyone is meant to walk every stage of your journey with you. Some relationships fit earlier phases of life, but not later ones. Holding on to them out of guilt or habit can create tension between who you are becoming and who you were. When you adjust boundaries or distance, it is not superiority, it is self-preservation of growth. Healthy connections adapt and support your evolution. Those that cannot may naturally fade. That transition can feel lonely, but loneliness during growth is often temporary. It creates space for connections that match your new standards. Releasing limiting patterns also builds internal clarity. When distractions decrease and excuses fade, you see your priorities more sharply. Energy once scattered across conflicting habits becomes focused. That focus accelerates progress because effort is no longer diluted. Instead of constantly resetting after setbacks caused by old patterns, you move steadily forward. Momentum emerges when your behaviors, environment, and goals align in the same direction. Without that alignment, progress feels like pushing against resistance. With alignment, progress feels natural and sustainable. There is also empowerment in recognizing that you are allowed to change your standards. Many people unconsciously follow expectations inherited from family, peers, or culture. They fear outgrowing those expectations because it may disrupt belonging. But belonging that requires shrinking yourself is costly. Rebuilding involves redefining what is acceptable for your time, energy, and attention. You begin to choose growth, supportive norms, even if they differ from those around you. That shift marks maturity, the transition from external definition to internal direction. Ultimately, letting go of environments, excuses, and comfort zones is not loss but transition. You are exchanging familiarity for possibility. The process may feel unstable at first because old reference points disappear before new ones fully form. But that in-between space is where transformation stabilizes. As you continue choosing aligned actions and surroundings, a new normal emerges, one that supports your evolving identity. And once that new normal is established, the very things that once required effort become natural expressions of who you have chosen to become. Consistency in small actions is one of the most underestimated forces in personal transformation. People often believe that big results require big moves, dramatic changes, massive effort, or sudden breakthroughs. But lasting change rarely works that way. It grows quietly, built through small behaviors repeated over time. The problem is that small actions feel insignificant in the moment. Waking up 30 minutes earlier, reading a few pages, exercising briefly, practicing a skill for a short period, none of these feel life-changing today. But when performed consistently, they begin to reshape identity, discipline, and direction in powerful ways. The mind naturally seeks immediate rewards. It wants visible progress, quick validation, and instant gratification. That's why people abandon small habits too early. They expect dramatic results within days, and when they don't see them, they assume nothing is happening. What they fail to recognize is that growth is often invisible in the beginning, just like seeds underground. The early stages of development occur beneath the surface. Roots are forming before anything is visible above ground. If you stop watering the seed because you don't see growth immediately, you interrupt the process before it has a chance to emerge. Small actions matter because they compound. Compounding is not just financial, it applies to behavior, skill, and mindset. If you improve slightly every day, those improvements stack. A minor increase in discipline repeated daily strengthens self-control over time. A brief learning session repeated consistently builds knowledge that eventually creates expertise. Even small shifts in thinking, practiced repeatedly, can rewire long-held beliefs. The key is not intensity, it is repetition. Intensity burns out quickly. Repetition builds endurance. There is also a psychological advantage in starting small. Large goals can feel overwhelming, triggering avoidance. The brain resists tasks that seem too demanding or uncertain. But small actions reduce that resistance. They lower the barrier to entry. When the task feels manageable, you are more likely to begin, and beginning is powerful. Once you start, momentum often carries you further than expected. A short workout can turn into a longer one. A few minutes of focus can extend into a productive session. The hardest part is usually initiation, and small habits make initiation easier. Consistency builds credibility with yourself. Every time you follow through on a small commitment, you strengthen internal trust. That trust fuels confidence. Many people lack confidence not because they are incapable, but because they have repeatedly broken promises to themselves. By committing to small daily actions and honoring them, you repair that trust. Over time, you begin to see yourself as dependable. That perception changes how you approach challenges. Instead of doubting whether you will stick with something, you expect yourself to follow through because you have built a pattern of doing so. Another important aspect is that small actions create structure. Structure reduces chaos and emotional fluctuation. When certain behaviors become automatic parts of your day, you rely less on mood or circumstances. Whether you feel motivated or not, the action occurs. That reliability stabilizes progress. Life will always present unpredictable events, but consistent routines provide an anchor. They give you a sense of control even when other areas feel uncertain. That stability is essential for long-term rebuilding because it prevents emotional highs and lows from completely disrupting your direction. Small actions also reduce fear. Large changes often come with high perceived risk. The brain exaggerates potential failure when stakes feel high, but small steps feel safer. They allow gradual exposure to growth without overwhelming anxiety. As you accumulate small wins, fear decreases because you gain evidence of capability. That evidence builds resilience. You become less intimidated by bigger challenges because you have practiced consistent effort on smaller ones. Over time, what once required effort becomes natural. Habits automate behavior, conserving mental energy. Instead of debating whether to act, you act automatically. That automation frees attention for higher-level thinking and creativity. As discipline becomes routine, your capacity expands. You are no longer fighting yourself daily. You are progressing steadily. The beauty of consistent small actions is that they democratize success. You do not need extraordinary talent to improve daily. You need commitment to repetition. Anyone can take a small step forward today. And when that step is repeated tomorrow and the next day, it transforms into progress. Over months and years, that steady progress separates those who dream from those who built. Small actions, practiced consistently, turn intention into reality and gradually reshape the trajectory of your entire life. Your past mistakes can become the foundation for future strength when you choose to interpret them as lessons instead of limitations. Many people carry their past like a weight, constantly replaying failures, regrets, and missed opportunities. They see their history as evidence of incapability or poor judgment, and that perception quietly shapes their present behavior. When you believe your past defines you, you hesitate to try again. You expect the same outcomes. You anticipate failure before action. In this way, the past stops being a memory and becomes a boundary. Rebuilding yourself requires breaking that boundary by transforming how you relate to what has already happened. Mistakes are inevitable in any meaningful growth process. Trying new directions, making decisions with incomplete knowledge, trusting the wrong people, choosing poorly under pressure, these experiences are part of being human. Yet many people interpret mistakes as permanent flaws rather than temporary missteps. They shift from "I made a mistake" to "I am a mistake." That identity fusion is damaging because it attaches shame to experience. Shame discourages action. It keeps you trapped in analysis, regret, or avoidance. But when you separate your identity from your actions, something changes. A mistake becomes information instead of condemnation. Information is powerful because it guides adjustment. Every failure contains data about what did not work, what you misunderstood, or what you need to develop. When you examine mistakes objectively, they become teachers. They reveal blind spots, weaknesses, or patterns that require change. Without mistakes, you would lack feedback. Progress would stall because you would not know what to refine. In this sense, the past is not an obstacle, but a resource. It contains the raw material for wisdom. The difference between someone stuck and someone rebuilding is not the number of mistakes, it is the interpretation of them. There is also resilience built through recovery. When you fall and rise again, you strengthen psychological endurance. You learn that setbacks are survivable. That knowledge reduces fear of future risk. People who have never failed often fear failure intensely because it is unknown. Those who have failed and recovered carry a different mindset. They understand that difficulty passes, that adaptation is possible, and that identity is not destroyed by error. This resilience becomes a structural support in future challenges. The past, once painful, becomes proof of durability. Another transformation occurs when regret is reframed as direction. Many regrets highlight values you neglected or goals you postponed. They point toward what matters. For example, regret about wasted time signals the importance of purposeful action. Regret about unhealthy choices signals the desire for well-being. Regret about missed opportunities signals ambition. When you read regret this way, it stops being a source of self-attack and becomes a compass. It shows you where to invest effort now. The same memory that once caused guilt can motivate change when interpreted constructively. Your past also provides empathy and depth. Experiences of difficulty expand understanding of others and of yourself. They add nuance to your perspective. Strength is not only about achievement, it is also about awareness gained through hardship. People who rebuild often carry insight that those with easier paths lack. That insight shapes wiser decisions and more grounded confidence. It reminds you that success is not perfection but adaptation over time. In this way, the past contributes not only to personal strength, but to emotional maturity. Letting mistakes become foundation rather than burden also requires forgiveness. Holding on to self-blame keeps you anchored in old identity. Forgiveness does not mean denying responsibility. It means releasing perpetual punishment. You acknowledge the error, extract the lesson, and allow movement forward. Without this release, rebuilding stalls because attention remains fixed on what cannot be changed. Growth always occurs in the present, informed by the past, but not imprisoned by it. Over time, when you integrate lessons from mistakes, patterns change. Decisions improve because they incorporate prior understanding. Awareness increases because you recognize early signs of unproductive paths. Confidence grows because you know you can adapt. The same experiences that once weakened you become supports beneath you. They elevate judgment, resilience, and clarity. Your foundation becomes stronger precisely because it includes reinforced areas where cracks once existed. Ultimately, the past does not lose power by being erased. It loses power by being transformed. When you reinterpret mistakes as formative rather than defining, you reclaim agency. You become someone shaped by experience rather than limited by it. Each error contributes to structure instead of damage. And as those contributions accumulate, you stand on a foundation built not from perfection, but from learned strength, stable, realistic, and capable of supporting the future you are actively creating. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you from the heart today, because this message is not about impressing anyone else. It's about saving yourself. And staying consistent for yourself is one of the hardest things you will ever do in life, because nobody is clapping in the beginning. Nobody is watching you wake up early. Nobody is cheering when you say no to comfort. And nobody is giving you credit for the discipline you're trying to build. And that's exactly why most people quit. They're waiting for motivation from the outside when consistency is an inside job. See, consistency is not about feeling good every day. It's about showing up even when you don't feel like it. Some days you're going to be tired. Some days you're going to feel confused. Some days you're going to doubt yourself and wonder if it's even worth it. But consistency is you saying, I'm still going to do it anyway. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build self-respect. And when you break a promise to yourself, you slowly lose confidence. You don't lose confidence overnight. You lose it one excuse at a time. You have to understand this. You don't owe the world consistency. You owe it to yourself. The world will move on whether you win or lose, whether you succeed or fail. But you have to live with you. You have to wake up with you every single day. And when you look in the mirror, you should be able to say, I didn't quit on myself. That's what consistency really is. It's loyalty to the vision God put in your heart, even when the results are slow. A lot of people say they're waiting for the right time. Let me tell you something. There is no right time. The right time is when you decide. You don't get consistent after you feel ready. You feel ready after you get consistent. Discipline comes before motivation, not the other way around. If you only work when you feel inspired, you'll stay stuck. But if you work because you decided this is who you are now, your feelings will eventually catch up. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real tonight, something that changed my life long before the money, before the suits, before the lights. Consistency is not about motivation. It's about decision. Motivation comes and goes. Some days you wake up fired up. Some days you wake up tired, confused, doubting yourself. If consistency depended on how you feel, none of us would ever win. Consistency is what you do when you don't feel like doing nothing at all. It's about showing up for yourself even when nobody is clapping, even when nobody sees you, even when it looks like your effort is not producing results yet. That's the part most people don't understand. They want instant success, instant reward, instant validation. But consistency is quiet. Consistency works in silence. Consistency is lonely sometimes because you're walking a road most people quit on early. You see, staying consistent for yourself means you finally stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop telling yourself, I'll start tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'll wait until I'm ready. Let me tell you something about being ready. If you wait until you feel ready, you will wait your whole life. Nobody ever feels completely ready to chase a dream that scares them. Consistency means you do it scared. You do it tired. You do it unsure. You do it while still figuring it out. I had to learn that the hard way. I didn't wake up one day knowing how to be successful. I woke up knowing I had to keep going, even when the results weren't matching the effort. That's what separates dreamers from doers. Staying consistent for yourself also means you stop looking for external approval. Too many people quit because nobody is cheering for them in the beginning. Nobody is liking your posts. Nobody is supporting your vision. Nobody is calling you talented yet. But consistency is not built on applause. It's built on commitment. You have to clap for yourself when nobody else will. You have to believe in the work when there is no evidence yet. Faith works like that. You believe first, you work second, and the results come last. Most people want results first. That's why they quit. Consistency requires faith in the unseen, faith in the process, faith in who you are becoming even before you become it. Let me say this clearly. Consistency is an act of self-respect. When you keep promises to yourself, your confidence grows. When you break promises to yourself, your confidence shrinks. Every time you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, you teach yourself not to trust yourself. And every time you follow through, even on something small, you build a stronger relationship with you. That's powerful. That's how discipline is born. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want right now. Consistency is choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. There will be days you fall off. Let me free from this lie of perfection. Consistency does not mean you never mess up. Consistency means you don't quit when you mess up. You get back up. You forgive yourself. You adjust and you keep moving. Missing one day doesn't ruin your future, but quitting does. One bad week doesn't cancel your purpose, but giving up does. The problem is not falling. The problem is staying down and calling it failure. Failure is not falling short. Failure is stopping altogether. Staying consistent for yourself also means protecting your focus. Everybody doesn't need access to your dream. Everybody doesn't deserve an opinion on what God placed in your heart. Some people will talk you out of your consistency because they're uncomfortable with your discipline. They'll call you obsessed. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you'd really mean that they really mean is you're doing what they don't have the courage to do. Consistency requires boundaries. Sometimes you have to say no to good things to stay committed to the great thing. And finally, understand this: consistency compounds. Small actions done daily will always beat big actions done occasionally. You don't have to do everything at once. You just have to do something every day. Progress loves patience. Success rewards persistence. If you stay consistent long enough, life has no choice but to change. Not because it's easy, but because it's law. You become what you repeatedly do. Stay consistent for yourself because you are worth the effort, the time, and the discipline it takes to become who you were meant to be. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real about consistency, because everybody wants it, everybody talks about it, but very few people actually live it. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to stay consistent for themselves is because they are waiting to feel like it. They wake up looking for motivation, energy, excitement, or the perfect mood. But consistency was never built on feelings. Feelings change every single day. You don't feel like going to work sometimes, but you go. You don't feel like paying bills, but you pay them. Why? Because responsibility doesn't care about your mood. If you really want to stay consistent for yourself, you have to stop letting your feelings run your life and start letting discipline lead the way. See, discipline is doing what you said you were going to do long after the excitement is gone. When you first start something new, you're fired up. You're watching videos. You're writing goals. You're telling people, this time I'm serious. But a few weeks later, the claps stop, the motivation fades, and now it's just you and the work. That's where consistency is born. Not in inspiration, but in repetition. The people who win aren't more talented than you. They're just more disciplined than you. They decided, no matter how I feel today, I'm going to show up. You have to understand this: your future doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you do repeatedly. You can say you want success, peace, growth, or change, but if your daily actions don't match that desire, nothing is going to move. Consistency is proof that you actually believe in yourself. When you keep showing up on the days nobody is watching, that's you telling the universe, I'm serious. But when you quit every time it gets hard, you're sending another message, and that message is doubt. A lot of people quit on themselves because they set unrealistic expectations. They think consistency means perfection. It doesn't. Consistency means progress, even when it's small, even when it's ugly, even when it feels slow. If all you can give today is 30%, give that 30% and be proud you didn't give 0. Staying consistent doesn't mean you never get tired. It means you don't stop just because you're tired. There's a big difference. Let me tell you something else that matters. You have to stop negotiating with yourself. Every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, or I'll do it later, you're teaching yourself that your word doesn't mean anything. And if you can't trust yourself, who do you think will? Consistency starts when you keep small promises to yourself. Wake up when you said you would. Do the work you said you'd do, even if it's just a little. Those small wins build self, and self-respect fuels consistency. You also have to accept that consistency is lonely sometimes. People won't always understand why you're so focused. They may even laugh at you in the beginning. But remember this, people will doubt you until they can't ignore you. Don't look for validation while you're building. Validation usually comes after the results, not before. If you need applause to stay consistent, you'll quit as soon as the noise fades. Learn to clap for yourself in private. Another hard truth is this: consistency requires sacrifice. You can't keep the same habits, the same distractions, the same excuses and expect a different life. Something has to go. Sometimes it's comfort. Sometimes it's late nights. Sometimes it's people who don't support your growth. Staying consistent for yourself means choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure. And that choice has to be made daily, not once. And finally, understand this deeply: nobody is coming to save you. No one is going to wake you up, push you every day, or force you to become who you're meant to be. That responsibility belongs to you. When you stay consistent for yourself, you're not just building success, you're building character. You're becoming someone you can rely on. And once you become that person, once you prove to yourself that you don't quit when it gets hard, there is nothing you can't accomplish. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about staying consistent, we have to be honest with ourselves about the power of discipline in our lives. Consistency isn't something that just happens. It's something you build, something you fight for every single day. You see, most people think consistency is about doing big things all at once, but that's a mistake. True consistency is about showing up for yourself, even when nobody is watching, even when the world tells you it's too hard, even when your own mind is filled with excuses and doubts. The third key point I want to share with you is that consistency thrives on routine, on habits, on the small daily decisions that seem insignificant at first, but compound into something powerful over time. Every morning when you wake up, you are making a choice. You are choosing whether day will be a day that moves you forward or a day that keeps you stuck. It might feel easy to brush off the small decisions, to skip a workout, to scroll social media instead of focusing on your goals, to delay the work that your dreams demand. But I'm telling you right now, ladies and gentlemen, these small choices define who you become. If you want to be consistent, you have to master the art of showing up in the little moments, over and over again. I want you to think about the power of habits. Habits are the building blocks of consistency. When you create a habit, you remove the question from your mind. You don't have to rely on willpower every day. Your actions become automatic. You see, most people rely on motivation to get things done, but motivation is a fleeting thing. Motivation comes and goes like the weather. One day you feel on fire, the next day you feel like quitting. But habits don't care about how you feel. Habits are built when you commit to doing something over and over, no matter what. If you want to stay consistent, you have to create habits that align with your goals. Maybe it's waking up an hour earlier to work on yourself. Maybe it's writing down your priorities every morning. Maybe it's dedicating just 15 minutes to learning something new. Whatever it is, start small, because consistency doesn't require grand gestures. It requires persistent effort day after day. You want to be the kind of person who doesn't make excuses, who doesn't wait for the perfect moment, because the truth is, the perfect moment rarely comes. You have to create it with your actions, your choices, and your persistence. Now let me talk to you about accountability. Staying consistent is not just a mental game, it's also a social game. You need people in your life who will hold you to your commitments, who will remind you why you started when you feel like giving up, who will celebrate your small wins and push you through your setbacks. Consistency is easier when you are surrounded by others who understand the value of persistence, who are walking the same path and striving for the same kind of growth. If you isolate yourself, if you try to do everything alone, it becomes much harder to stay consistent. You see, accountability is not about shame, it's about support. It's about creating an environment where showing up for yourself is encouraged, expected, and even celebrated. Find those people, hold yourself accountable to them, and most importantly, hold yourself accountable to yourself. Because at the end of the day, the person you are being consistent for is not anyone else, it's you. Your dreams, your goals, your growth, your potential, they all require your commitment, your persistence, and your unwavering dedication. Another part of staying consistent is learning to embrace discomfort. You see, the path of consistency is not always easy. It is often uncomfortable. It demands sacrifice. It demands patience. You might not see results immediately. You might feel like giving up 1,000 times. But let me tell you something. Ladies and gentlemen, growth never happens in comfort. Consistency is forged in the fires of discipline. You will have days when your mind says, don't bother. Take a break. Relax. That's when you dig deep and remind yourself why you started, why you cannot afford to quit, why your dreams are worth the effort. Consistency is choosing to do what needs to be done, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it, even when the reward is not immediate. Every step you take, no matter how small, moves you closer to becoming the person you are meant to be. It's in the struggle, in the daily grind, that you discover the strength you never knew you had. Finally, staying consistent requires reflection. You must take the time to evaluate your progress, to see what's working, what's not, and adjust accordingly. Consistency does not mean blindly repeating the same actions without thought. It means being deliberate, being intentional, and being aware of your growth. Celebrate your wins. Learn from your mistakes and keep moving forward. Every day is an opportunity to show up for yourself, to build a stronger habit, to make better choices, and a step closer to the life you want. And when you do this, when you commit to the process, when you embrace the discomfort, when you build habits and accountability, consistency stops being a struggle and starts becoming a way of life. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of showing up for yourself day after day, no matter what. Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth key point I want to share with you is the importance of mindset in staying consistent. You see, consistency is not just about doing things day after day. It's about believing in yourself and in the process, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Too many people give up because they don't see immediate results. They start strong, full of excitement and energy, but after a week, a month, or even a few months, they feel discouraged and quit. Let me tell you something right now, progress is often invisible at first. The small daily actions you take may not seem to make a difference today, but they are building a foundation for a breakthrough that is coming, whether you see it or not. If you want to stay consistent, you have to trust the process, trust yourself, and develop a mindset that refuses to quit, no matter the challenges or delays. Consistency is born from a mindset that says, I am committed and I will keep going, even when it's hard. Your mind will play tricks on you. It will tell you that your efforts don't matter, that your goals are too big, or that you are not capable of achieving them. And that is when you have to fight back. You have to remind yourself that the mind lies when it wants comfort and convenience. The truth is, you are capable of more than you realize, and every time you push through, every time you refuse to give up, You are training your mind to support your goals instead of holding you back. Mindset is the foundation of consistency because without it, no amount of planning, scheduling, or motivation will keep you moving forward. You have to build a mental framework that values persistence, that sees setbacks as lessons instead of failures, and that understands that small progress is still progress, and that refuses to let temporary feelings dictate permanent decisions. Another part of developing the right mindset is focusing on your why. You have to know why you are doing what you are doing. Why are you putting in the effort every single day? Why are you pushing yourself when it's uncomfortable? Your why is your anchor. The reason you get out of bed even when you feel tired, the reason you keep moving forward when others give up. When your why is strong enough, it gives your actions meaning, and meaning fuels consistency. Without a strong reason, it's easy to get distracted, to lose focus, or to justify giving up. But when your purpose is clear, every choice, every habit, and every decision becomes easier because it's tied to something bigger than a passing feeling or temporary obstacle. Mindset also means being patient with yourself. Consistency is not about perfection. It's about progress. You will stumble. You will miss a day. You will make mistakes. And that's okay. What matters is not the mistake. It's what you do after. Do you get up and keep going, or do you let one misstep turn into a full stop? People who stay consistent are not people who never fail. They are people who refuse to quit. They understand that life will throw challenges at them. That motivation will waver, and that discipline will be tested. But they keep showing up anyway. Mindset is the armor that protects you from giving up when life gets hard. It is the mental strength that turns consistency into a habit and a lifestyle. Finally, mindset is about envisioning the life you want. When you consistently see yourself achieving your goals, when you imagine the version of yourself that has mastered discipline, focus, and dedication, your mind starts aligning your actions with that vision. Your thoughts, feelings, and choices begin to match the person you want to become. This is why mindset matters more than talent, more than circumstances, more than luck. If your mind is consistent, your actions will follow. If you develop a mindset that refuses to quit, embraces challenges, trusts the process, and focuses on your why, you will find that consistency is no longer a struggle, but a natural part of who you are. Ladies and gentlemen, the fifth key point I want to share with you is the importance of managing your environment to support your consistency. You see, so many people struggle with staying consistent because they try to rely solely on willpower, and willpower is a limited resource. If you want to stay consistent, you need to create an environment that makes it easier for you to succeed and harder for you to fail. Your surroundings, the people you spend time with, the tools and habits you set up for yourself, all of these shape your ability to show up day after day. Consistency doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in an environment that either supports it or sabotages it. If you want to see change, you have to look carefully at your environment and make deliberate choices to align it with your goals. Think about it. If you are trying to eat healthy, but your kitchen is full of junk food, every day is going to be a struggle. If you are trying to focus on work or learning, but your phone is constantly buzzing with notifications, distraction becomes inevitable. If you are trying to be productive and consistent, but you spend most of your time around people who don't respect your goals or push you forward, staying on track is almost impossible. Your environment either feeds your consistency or feeds your excuses. You cannot leave this to chance. You have to design your environment so that it naturally encourages the behaviors you want to adopt. That might mean organizing your space, removing distractions, setting boundaries, or even changing the people you spend the most time with. When you do this, showing up consistently becomes easier because you are not constantly fighting against external forces. You are aligning yourself with success. Another part of managing your environment is controlling your inputs. What you read, watch, and listen to has a massive impact on your mindset, your energy, and your actions. If you fill your mind with negativity, gossip, or stories of failure, your motivation and focus will suffer. If you feed your mind with inspiration, knowledge, and positive energy, your consistency will be fueled from within. Surround yourself with books, podcasts, videos, and people that remind you of your goals, challenge you to be better, and encourage you to keep going. This is how champions are made, by creating an environment that consistently reinforces the life they want to live. You also have to think about time management as part of your environment. Consistency requires structure, scheduling, and deliberate planning. When you know what you are supposed to do, and when you are supposed to do it, you remove the chaos and uncertainty that often leads to procrastination and inconsistency. Block out time for your priorities, protect that time fiercely, and treat it as non-negotiable. The more intentional you are with your time, the easier it is to stay consistent because you're creating a system that supports your goals instead of relying on random bursts of motivation. Finally, your environment is not just physical, it's emotional. The way you feel about yourself, the self-talk you engage in, the emotions you nurture, all of these are part of your environment. If you allow self-doubt, fear, or negativity to dominate your mind, consistency will be a constant battle. But if you cultivate positivity, self-belief, and patience, you give yourself the internal support to keep showing up even when things get hard. Ladies and gentlemen, consistency is easier when your environment, both inside and outside, is aligned with the person you are trying to become. The small adjustments you make to your surroundings, your inputs, your time, and your mindset can multiply your results in ways you never imagined. When your environment works for you instead of against you, showing up for yourself becomes a natural part of who you are, and success stops being a struggle and starts being a habit. Ladies and gentlemen, the sixth key point I want to share with you is about resilience and the power of never giving up. Consistency is not about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about continuing to move forward, even when life pushes back, even when setbacks try to derail you, even when it feels like the world is against you. You see, everyone will face obstacles. Everyone will encounter moments when the path ahead seems impossible. But the people who achieve greatness, the people who stick to their goals and dreams, are not the ones who never fail. They are the ones who refuse to quit. Resilience is the secret ingredient that keeps you consistent. It is the inner strength that allows you to rise every time you fall, to try again when others have given up, and to keep your eyes on the prize no matter how long the journey takes. Life will test you in ways you never expected. There will be days when you feel exhausted, discouraged, and frustrated. There will be moments when everything seems to be going wrong, and the temptation to quit is overwhelming. That is the exact moment when consistency matters the most. It is in those difficult moments that showing up for yourself separates the dreamers from the doers. When you develop resilience, you understand that failure is not a reason to stop. It is a reason to learn, to adjust, and to push harder. Every setback is a lesson. Every obstacle is an opportunity to grow, and every challenge is a chance to prove to yourself that you are stronger than you think. Consistency thrives on resilience because it requires the courage to continue when the easy choice is to give up. Resilience also comes from perspective. You have to remember why you started, why your goals matter, and why your dreams deserve your effort. Too often, people lose sight of their purpose when things get tough. They focus on the struggle instead of the reward, the obstacle instead of the vision. But when you keep your purpose in mind, resilience becomes natural. You begin to see challenges as temporary, setbacks as small, and the path ahead as something you can overcome. It's about believing in yourself and your vision, even when the results are not immediate. The ability to maintain that belief, to trust the process, and to keep moving forward is what builds consistency over time. Another important aspect of resilience is flexibility. Staying consistent does not mean stubbornly repeating the same actions without adjustment. It means being willing to learn, adapt, and improve as you go. You might encounter situations that require you to change your approach, rethink your strategies, or find new solutions to old problems. Resilient people do not see change as a threat. They see it as an opportunity to refine their path and strengthen their commitment. They understand that adaptability is a crucial part of consistency because life is unpredictable, and the ability to adjust while staying true to your goals is what ensures long-term success. Finally, resilience is reinforced by celebrating small victories. Every time you stick to your routine, overcome a challenge, or achieve a minor milestone, you build confidence and momentum. These wins, no matter how small, remind you that your efforts are paying off and motivate you to keep going. Ladies and gentlemen, consistency is not just about showing up when it's easy. It's about showing up when it's hard, when it's uncomfortable, and when giving up seems like the easiest choice. Resilience gives you the strength to do just that. When you embrace resilience, when you commit to never quitting, when you see obstacles as opportunities, consistency becomes a natural part of your life, and nothing can stop you from becoming the person you are meant to be.